after the brutal military action in Libya to destroy that country, not just Gaddafi, but that country, the US decided to move on to Syria. This is a long-term plan. It's been on the Pentagon war map for at least a decade, to change the political map of the Middle East. And they thought they could roll into Syria on the momentum of Libya and destroy the al-Assad regime and bring in a Muslim Brotherhood opposition in Syria. Well, Syria is a country, if you look on the map behind me, it's a country with many different religious minorities. Druze, Sunni is the majority, Alawite is a minority, Bashar al-Assad is an Alawite, his wife is a Sunni, and you have the Kurds. For many, many years, Syrian friends of mine have assured me, all different religious groups lived together side by side in a society that was basically secular. There was no Alawite belief being forced on the Sunni majority by al-Assad or his father. And suddenly Syria was under attack. Now, if you go to the next slide, the next overhead, you'll see the critical location of Syria geopolitically in the Middle East. Syria borders Turkey, it borders Israel, it borders Lebanon, it borders Iraq. And in 2011, Bashar al-Assad's government signed a contract with the government of Iran and the government of Iraq to build a gas pipeline from the South Pars gas field, the largest gas field known in the world today, so that Iran could market its gas through Iraq, whose prime minister is a Shia Muslim, and through Syria, whose prime minister is an Alawite, but on friendly terms with both Iraq and with Iran. Iranian natural gas potentially, ultimately, into the European market, either through port locations in Syria or through Lebanon. Now, it begins at this point to get very geopolitically complicated, but basically, when that agreement was announced by the Syrian government, the US and NATO allies organized a massive, dramatic escalation of the destruction of the al-Assad regime, accusing al-Assad of terrorism, accusing him of civilian atrocities, everything, the usual playbook that is used by the State Department to demonize anyone they don't like. But in reality, the factor of this new pipeline created a major geopolitical challenge, not just to the United States, but interestingly enough, to Israel, which in 2010 had discovered a huge, for the first time in Israeli history since 1948, a huge offshore gas field called Leviathan in the Eastern Mediterranean. And Israel began nursing ambitions of becoming an energy superpower, tiny little Israel, which hadn't had any energy to speak of its own until then. So together with an American company, Noble Energy, an Israeli-American consortium began developing the Leviathan field, and another Middle East country called Qatar also began emerging as a major exporter of liquefied natural gas from another part of the field in the Persian Gulf that's adjoining to the Iranian field. Unfortunately, I don't have a map to show that, but the same gas field that was discovered in Iranian exclusive economic zone waters in the Persian Gulf. extends over to Qatar. And the Qataris, with the help of the British energy companies, developed the liquefied natural gas technology to market this to Asia and ultimately to Western Europe. So, not surprisingly, much of the financing for the mercenaries, and they're not opposition for the most part. These are mercenaries. I was in Tehran in February of this year and interviewed a number of journalists who'd spent months all across Syria interviewing mercenaries, Al-Qaeda, and others fighting against the regime. They are paid $100 a day, which is a king's fortune for many of these poor, unemployed people from they're coming from Chechnya, they're coming from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Libya, where they had excellent combat experience. And they're given Kalashnikovs and $100 a day and told to go in from the Turkish border into Iraq and create terror. And that through the chaos and terror, they're told, we'll back you up and create a regime change against this evil Bashar al-Assad regime. So the financing to the tune of some $5 billion for these mercenary terrorists came from the Emir of Qatar. The Emir of Qatar also houses the headquarters internationally of the Muslim Brotherhood. And it shouldn't be surprising that the leadership of the Syrian opposition, so-called, are all Muslim Brotherhood, or most of them. So this operation ran into a very unexpected resistance when the president of Russia and the Chinese government and the government of Iran, but particularly President Putin here in Russia, drew a deep line in the sand on the Syrian border and said, we will not permit this illegal process of war against an established regime. This is not something we can support under the United Nations Charter. It's a violation of every precept of international law, and we will not allow another Libya to take place.